Okay, well, welcome, Audrey. I'm so excited to have you here to talk about homeschooling. Homeschooling has been a subject that I've thought about so much because when I was in elementary school, I felt like there was really a box and everyone had to fit in and learn the exact same way. And I really didn't feel like I was that person. And I feel like it affected my confidence a lot. And when I got to high school, I did a lot better. But I think back to that time and I don't know, I just find it a bit strange how, especially at such a young age when you're so creative, that we're all trying to learn the same way. So I'm super excited to have someone here who can talk from a firsthand experience about what homeschooling was like from your perspective, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions and generalizations about it.
Yeah,
So yeah,
for sure. Thanks for having me.
oh, I'm so pumped. It's going to be great. Yeah, I mean, I kind of have some context, but I know that the pandemic was a bit of like a moment déclencheur to get the homeschooling going. So what was it that you noticed in your kids during the pandemic going to school?
Definitely. When it happened, the pandemic happened, my oldest daughter, Sky, she was in kindergarten. And and I had just given birth to Luana, our youngest one. And 2 weeks later, she's a newborn. 2 weeks later, pandemic. And then everybody was out of school. Right. So Sky
Hmm.
was automatically, I guess, homeschooled, like many children are doing like remote school with their teachers on the screen. But since it was kindergarten, there wasn't any of that for her. So it was very
Mm.
just being at home with mom and the parents and everybody, I guess. So she didn't have the experience of the online school, with the virtual teaching. I think,
Hmm.
which is maybe a good thing because I've heard a lot of I think it was really rough and hard for many parents and children to stay,
Yes.
sitting the whole day in front of a screen and stuff and missing that social, physical interaction. So my kids definitely had that confusion, I think, like many other kids had during the pandemic, like what's going on? Why is this happening? Why is everybody wearing a
Hmm.
mask? Like all these
Hmm.
questions that I think that we had too, our children had at a certain level,
Hmm.
and for us, what brought us onto like this homeschooling journey with the pandemic, it was kind of like an opportunity for us because a bit like you, when for me, school, traditional schooling, when I was younger and little, especially elementary school, was very similar experience as what you were sharing earlier about like feeling like everybody was put into a box, and I understand the need for that in a way because there's so many kids and there's one teacher, and but I think there's different schools and thought, and schools of thought that do differently nowadays too. There's more available school, program and stuff. But anyways, that's how I felt, and I had the opportunity myself when I was in second grade to be homeschooled with my parents.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
know
my
that.
parents, we were living in Florida at that time, and my parents decided to sell the house. They were originally from Montreal, my parents, and at the time they decided to sell the house and go around the United States in an RV. So they bought an RV, and we were living in, a motorhome, and we were learning as we were going around all the states of the United States, and we learned so many things. We visited all these like cool museums and places where they
Hmm.
make baseballs and whatnot, Crayola, and
Yeah.
anyways, and so we were homeschooled for that year. And I still remember to this day, like what we learned and the experiences we went through. And I feel like that year was so rich in learning opportunities and
Hmm.
experiences and just the relief of that anxiety, I think, and the like wanting to perform, when I was even so little,
Hmm.
the pressure that school put on my shoulders, like directly and indirectly, that I put myself, through. So I really felt like so just happy and to be surrounded by my other brothers and sisters. We're six kids at home and my
Hmm.
parents. Anyways, it was a really joyful period in my childhood, and I remember always like telling myself that one day when I have children, I want to give them that opportunity because I really loved it. But
Hmm.
also when Sky arrived at the age of 5, and like it was kindergarten, and I still wanted that. It was so deeply inside me, and I was even nervous to send
Yeah.
her to school, right? But she went to kindergarten, and it was hard. It was really, really hard because she was very attached to me, to us. We've had this very like attachment parenting way of living, and she hadn't
Mm-hmm.
gone to like any daycare really, and we did everything together. So anyways, it was
Yeah.
hard, and then pandemic happened, and then she was home all the time, and then that's what gave me
Mm.
my answer, because I saw her whole person change. Like it just felt like I
Mm.
lifted a whole weight off her shoulders by having her at home, and doing all these learning activities at home instead of at school. So I was like,
Yes.
okay, this is my chance and my shot to do homeschooling. And we just went for
Mm.
it. Luckily my husband was just on board. He's just like, he believes in,
Yeah.
we have the same values and stuff, and he saw the good that could come from it, and he trusts me. So that's the biggest point. And we did the rest of kindergarten, I guess, if you want, but kindergarten is not mandatory in Quebec. So there's not a
Okay.
curriculum per se that you have to follow, right? And the child is still very young. For me, I love the whole Montessori approach. So the child learns through, real life skills, real life chores and stuff. So that's kindergarten.
Yes.
For me is a big Montessori moment. And so we did that, but then we decided to go through with first grade too. So we followed, and we jumped on the whole homeschool wagon, and we decided to do that. So she did first grade,
Yeah.
and then this year we just finished our second grade for Sky.
Wow. I didn't realize it's been 3 years
Yeah,
now.
it's been 3 years. Yeah,
Almost.
almost 3 years. Yeah, it's been a really
That's
cool
so impressive.
journey. Lots of learning.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So with Flynn, what grade would he be in now, and how did he
Yeah.
kind of fit into the mix?
So Flynn he turned 5 this January. So technically he'll be going to kindergarten in September 2022, right? So he's not even in kindergarten yet. So he doesn't have to follow any curriculum. Like when I say follow curriculum is because now in Quebec, there's some laws, or I say rules maybe, that have changed regarding home-based education for the past few years. That's all I've known though as a homeschooling parent. So but before that, you could do more of like an unschooling approach and stuff like that. But you have to like declare your child when they hit 6 years old. Either they go to traditional school or you homeschool them. You're the parent, you're the one that decides for their education. But you do have to follow the curriculum that is taught in schools now. So you have a bit more, I wouldn't say, you have to follow more. Anyway, so Flynn, he's just followed us in a way, like he does the activities with us, like arts and crafts and stuff like that. But when we take the school books out and stuff, he's not very interested, which I understand with his age. So he's done more of the all the activities we do outside of our home, or when we're going to museums or parks and stuff like that, and all the arts and crafts and the science projects. He loves that.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so interesting. And I love the point that you made about having that pressure so young and in school, and the anxiety that brought you, and probably Sky as well. And I can definitely relate to that. And when I see kids that I know who already in elementary school have hours and hours of homework, when I think back to what I was in elementary, I don't ever remember doing homework. And like, I'm so grateful for that. Like, we got home, we played our sports, we went outside, I don't know, I just really hate that it seems like in elementary school that you're already getting that pressure, because you have pressure for so much and for the rest of your life. It's just, I would feel strongly that I would want to protect that innocence and freedom. And
me too. I totally we do homeschooling, and for us it's like in the morning, when we do more of the activity books and stuff like that, the teaching moments where I'm teaching her about math problems or whatever it is, and then in the afternoon it's just more free time. We're playing outside, we're going to a park or whatever, we decide to do what we want to do. And then we see the other kids coming back from school, and some go to like the daycare, even after school, because their parents work, so they come back late, and then they can't play outside because it's like a 10-minute playing outside, and then the parents are like, oh, we have to come back to do the homework, and it's like an hour homework. So for me, it's just like, I can't believe how much they have on their plates, and it's 5 days of school. 5 days is, even a work week, 5 days is a lot, we find, as adults, so imagine going to school. It's work for them in a way, yes, they play, yes, there's interaction, but there's a lot of social, there's a lot of stimulation too, you know, and it's tiring. And then, they're put into sports or this and that activity, and which is all good.
Absolutely.
But I think it puts a lot on a kid's shoulders, like definitely. And that's one of the things I love the most about homeschooling is the pressure that's taking off, and just the freedom in our time and how we manage our time, the freedom in our the teaching, you know, what I decide as a parent to teach my child, the freedom in just our schedule, like I said, and it's a lot. Just you have more time, you know.
Yes,
yeah.
I know a lot of people, I guess mostly patients and people that I work with, I'm in the alternative world, chose a similar path during the pandemic. And it really seems like, you know, in elementary, it's already very structured. And then you add the pandemic regiments, and it's like you're taking away all the fun that is left almost. And so many people, it was, you know, the same things like how you're mentioning, it was, you know, my kid seems low energy, their personality has changed. And I don't think there's anyone who can see that more than a parent. And I don't know, I really respect parents' decision in that. And I just find it interesting. Like, I really hope they look back and they do some sort of study to analyze that, because I do think it was so hard on families, the pandemic. It's just,
I think so, yeah. And, you know, already school has a way of, like, you know, like we were saying, one way of teaching, and you have to fit in this kind of box in a way. And now you're already, you're adding to that all the other things that came with the pandemic that were just, for me, like even more isolating, you know, and even more, you got to figure it out on your own and manage this, and like the responsibility we put on children, you know, so young with all that. And that's one way, yes, I want to protect them from all of that. That's definitely one of the reasons too. But it wasn't just that, you know, it was really because it was like a core value of mine and of ours to be able to teach our children and learn, like have a home-based education. Yeah.
So once you and Jan made the decision that you were going to pursue homeschooling, what did that transition look like? Like, I think a lot of people are in the dark about how can I just one day decide I'm going to homeschool my kid from now on?
Yeah. Well,
what are the steps to take?
That's a good question. And I think it's a bit like daunting or intimidating when you just don't know. And I remember myself too, like being, okay, I want to make sure that I'm doing it the right way, you know, and that I'm giving everything my child needs and providing all the right tools and stuff. So luckily there's different resources, but the first thing you need to do if you want to do it with your child, you have to tell the school that your child was attending that you will take them out of school, you know, and you'll do home-based education or homeschooling. There's different terms for it. And then you have to tell the Minister of Education, or la DEM in French. So you have to, or an avis. So you have to give them a notice, basically. You have to fill out that form. It's not very complicated. And to help you navigate all the new things, there's an association called the AQED, or in French, it's called Association Québécoise pour l'Éducation à Domicile, which means Home-Based Education Association for Quebecers. And it's all a nonprofit organization. It's all parents that are homeschoolers or have homeschooled.
Okay, so cool.
And there's like legal support, and there's a lot of amazing tools and official documents that you can either like fill out from their website. You can pay a membership fee, like for the year, if you want like access to all those like documents and tools and promo codes for different like resources or apps or books, school books and stuff like that. So they'll tell you like step by step. They'll really like that's what I did, and it really helped me. So yeah, that's what I did. And then you have to decide, okay, what are the ways you're going to teach your child this year, you know, this upcoming year, because you'll have like a few weeks or a few months to, depending on when you decide to take your child out of the system, you have to submit a learning, how's it called in English? I wrote it down. A education project for the first part of the year. So step by step, a bit like what your child is going to learn at home. Okay. It seems a bit like complicated, but it can be very simple. It's like a one-pager thing. So there's examples online and stuff like that, because you have your contact person from the Minister of Education that will do
Okay.
follow-ups throughout the year, which is, I guess, fairly new in the recent years. That's all I've known, but I know it's been
Okay.
different before. Anyway, so you have like 3 follow-ups and things during the year with that contact person. So the one thing you want to make sure you do first is that. And then you can do, there's different approaches to teaching, right? There's like Montessori, like I was telling you, there's more like the school books. So you can ask the school that you're associated with. So the school that your child was previously going to, or the, how do you call it? Commission scolaire. So the school board that you are,
School board,
where you live with, live is associated with, and they can and they will give you information and what are the school books or apps or websites that they will be using during the year. Some are very like, some schools and teachers and the direction can be very helpful. And that's what I did actually with Sky the first year. I asked her previous teacher to help me figure out what books should I buy, because I do like to have a kind of like an unschooling approach to school in a way. Like my children, their learnings are led by them, by their interests, and then we develop on that. But I do like to follow the curriculum because I want to make sure that at the end of the year they are, where most students in their grade are. So that's why I like to buy those books. You don't have to do school books, activity books. You can do learning with many different tools and whatnot. So that's what I did basically. And
would you be able to give a specific example, like of a certain milestone that you wanted to meet and what your kind of approach to it was?
Yeah, for sure. So in first grade, it's a big year, I'd say, because second grade, like we just finished now, was good, but it was mostly a review, I find, of first grade and making sure that your child knows like how to read and stuff like that, is fluent and understands certain things. But first grade for me was like, okay, by, for example, I don't know, it was January, what month it was, but I was like hoping that she'd at least understand most, how do you say it, these sons, sounds for reading. So, because it's like the year where in Quebec curriculum where children are supposed to know how to read by the end, even though it's simple, basic words or beginning of sentences, it's not very complicated, but for me it was very important. And so I say that's the major one. And that's the one that really is rewarding as a parent. Well, in my experience, being, the teacher of my child and knowing that I'm the one that's held her hand in a way and just, seen her through all those steps. And actually now she reads, and today she reads like little, des romans, like story books or whatever, like real books for children, and she's like passionate about it. Every night she reads and she's just going through them.
It's amazing.
And I'm like so surprised, I'm amazed, and it all came from her at her own rhythm. If it was too tough, sometimes we take a step back, and we go back to the basic stuff, just the sounds of letters and just playing with all these board games where or cards, or taking the certain notes out, or drawing letters and sounds or whatever, even though it seemed simple and too easy for her when she was in first grade. I remember it was just like bringing it back to play, and I know kids learn through movement and sound. And so, and also having her teach Flynn, she loves that. She loves role playing. So I know my child, I know she loves, pretending she's a mom or whatever, and nurse, or, and then the school teacher is one of, she loves it. And so that's the way too, I could see where she's at. It wasn't putting pressure on her. It was just through play. Just, you guys want to play? You can use these books, crayons, whatever, like the blackboard, and, and then I could see like her trying to teach Flynn, and I was like, okay, that's where she's at now, and if I'm pushing.
Well, they say that that's really what mastery is when you can really explain to someone else in an easy way to comprehend that you've really understood your subject.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true. So true. You see it with children. So that's, that's another way to evaluate your child instead of having an exam, a sit down exam or what. That's one way to see, oh, my child's here, like that's okay. And this is what we need to work on, or whatever the next thing is.
Yeah. So, okay. So are there any exams that you have to do with homeschooling?
So now, since this year, Yeah, there are some exams that are mandatory. The ones from the Minister of Education that you have in, I believe it's fourth grade, sixth grade,
Hmm.
secondary 2 and 4 or 5. I'm not so sure which grades they are
Yeah.
in, but the ones that we all did.
Yeah.
Now they're mandatory for homeschoolers. I know the ACED, the association, is I'd say fighting hard to try to take that down or back because
Okay.
one reason a lot of homeschoolers, there's some children that have some certain difficulties. That's why their parent take them out of school, or they're not necessarily at the level they're supposed to be at. If you
Hmm.
follow the curriculum, right? But at home, they're in a safe place where they can take their time and what. So when they arrive at fourth grade, if they're not at the level that the others are, in normal traditional school, if they're faced with a minister exam of that level, then it can be really stressful,
Right.
and they're not necessarily prepared for that. So, but then
Okay.
I also read recently that they do have to do the exam, but the result doesn't matter.
Okay.
So I don't know
Hmm.
exactly the whole detail about it, but I know this is something that is like mandatory now for homeschoolers. Besides that, yes, you have to prove that your child has progressed. So
Okay.
there's different ways to show it. You can have a certified person evaluate your child, so like just a teacher. So you can pay for their service to evaluate your child at the end of the year. If you use, some people even have tutors that help throughout the year support their homeschooling journey. So that teacher will sometimes do the evaluation, and you could also do a
Okay.
portfolio, submit a portfolio. That's what I've done twice. I like that.
So you're always submitting this to the Ministry of
Yes, at your
Education. Okay.
contact person.
Okay.
That you have to throughout the year, and you have until, for example, I think this year was like June 15 to submit
Okay.
either your evaluation or your portfolio. So this year I did a
Okay.
portfolio, and it's with all the records of what your child has learned. Not all, I'm saying all, but it's not all. It's about 2 to 3 like records. So when I say a record, it could be like a picture of an activity page from a book. It
Okay.
can be guided an oral presentation on horseback riding, for example, like a 2 3 minute thing. I filmed that and I put it in the PDF
Hmm.
document. So that was like for her French speaking oral.
Okay.
That was proof of she's able to communicate.
Okay.
And you have to see, okay, my child knows how to speak and is confident or whatever, and then you tell them with a comment like, yes, my child has progressed this year in a very significant way. She still has to work on this,
Okay.
whatnot. And then you have to have a comment of the child. This is also kind of new. You have to have an overall comment or a comment of your child for each, like, I'd say, like, subject. Say what they like, what they
Hmm.
dislike. You could either have them just tell you, and then you write it into the document, or you have them write them, or however way you want to put it in. But
Right.
your child has to like participate in that
And
evaluation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
I'm happy
interesting.
mine is done and submitted. It's kind of long and time consuming and a bit stressful, but
Yeah.
it's not that complicated once you know how to do it. It's just you just don't want to come back to it. You just wish that everything's good. You don't have like all these messages after
Yes.
like to come back and fix her ad or whatever.
Okay. I understand. So yeah. So they can ask you then to add things, or
Yeah.
if it's not sufficient.
Develop on
Or,
something.
okay.
Like for me, I sent it and I was so surprised, but my contact person answered me within like an hour. She's like, wow, I
Wow.
loved it, because I put always a little bit extra. That's how sometimes I do things. Put like all the
Yeah.
video and extra pictures and stuff like that.
Okay.
And she just wanted more proof of English learning. And
Hmm.
for second grade, it's just oral like comprehension in English. So for
Okay.
me, I didn't have many like pictures or things because she's bilingual, she speaks English like every day with all her friends. So it's not perfect.
I'm so impressed by her
Yep.
English. I don't know when the last time was that I had seen her, but seeing her a couple days ago,
Yeah, I know.
she just came right up to me full of confidence speaking English. And every time she sees me now, right away, instantly in English. Like that was never the
Yeah.
case. I was so
Yeah, no,
impressed.
it's so good. They're surrounded by people that are bilingual, and I guess her speaking English was just like the new friends they just made in the new neighborhood. Like they speak most like English all the time, and I think just spending every day with them, it has really made her confident once more. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was it's really good. So for that example of that proof of English, I was like, I'm so happy she wrote me now instead of like in August, kind of thing. And so
Yes.
I just immediately added a video of her speaking English and like pictures of some work she did in English and stuff like that. So it was easy, quick,
It's
done, and then
perfect.
submitted, and it's all good.
Good. It sounds like they're very responsive, and then there's a very solid, like you feel like how you're explaining it is you felt like you were very well equipped from all the resources that were out there.
Yeah, you know what? I think now more and more, and because of, I think the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
really, I think it almost doubled the amount of homeschoolers, and it maintains,
Wow.
like they kept
Yeah.
but then doing it again. And also not just that, all the teachers and the parent teachers, like there's many teachers out there that are parents, right? And they've been at
Yes.
home more, and they've created all these programs. Like this year, I found
Mm-hmm.
an amazing program by a teacher, L'école de Madame Amélie, and it's
Okay.
online through her website. You can pay for a year, or for a month, or 2 months, or 3 months of a
Mm-hmm.
curriculum of activities, of printouts,
Okay.
and you can even have like Zooms with her and the other students, and you have access to apps or websites, learning resources through her. So yes, it's like you make a payment, and you can even have your education program. The project, I mean, that you submit to the Minister of Education. Like, she gives you the
Yeah.
whole information, because if you follow her thing, then so what you
Wow.
have to do as a parent in that situation is, yes, you have to like be there every single day and do like print out the things, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
virtual teacher, you're the teacher, but at least you didn't have to do all the
Yes.
research, because that's what I did most of
Mm.
the first year. I had the books, but I
Okay.
also went on the mieuxenseigner.com, or I mean, Allo Prof, and all these websites. There's a lot of websites, but you have to do like your research. Okay, for example, I want her to learn, I
Yes.
don't know, les voyelles, and then I'd go les activités sur les voyelles or whatever, and then I'd find these
Okay.
printouts free, or sometimes some you would pay. But there's so many available, and not just that. There's Facebook groups now. There's
Mm.
homeschooling meetups. There's always been, but I think it's becoming something more and more popular, I guess, and so
Yes.
it's really fun to know that you're supported. You have to go and reach
Mm-hmm.
out for it, that's for sure. I mean, you have to go find this information and stuff, but there
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of people out there. And it's funny because we just moved, as you know, Riley. And, in our community, the people that we've met living on the street and in the neighborhood, yes, we've met a lot of people that their kids go to school, but as many as we've met homeschoolers. So just
Really?
within, there's 4 kids like really close to us that are homeschoolers,
Okay. So
just on our
cool.
street. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we've been like exchanging contact. We've done these meetups and activities, and oh, you want to go
Mm-hmm.
fly a kite in this park? It's 1 p.m. Yeah, sure, why not? And then we just go, and
Yeah.
so it's really cool.
Okay. So
Mm.
interesting. So what did you see change in Sky when you transitioned to homeschooling?
Oh my gosh, I saw her become more who she was truly
Mm.
before she ever went to school. What that means for me is like just a joyful child, that has this peaceful spirit. She's very like calm
Mm-hmm.
and patient, and she was still that when she was going to school, but she was also very, very anxious. And so when we decided to do homeschooling, I just felt her spirit light up again and feel happy and energized and excited to learn at home, just
Mm-hmm.
just happiness. That's the word, I think. And relief. And I don't know if that would be the definite, like, what I noticed, for example, for Flynn, if he had gone first through this whole process, because he has a very,
Right.
very different personality. And so, but definitely for Sky, I think that's the biggest thing. And then I just saw her learn like so easily, and she was interested in learning, and I didn't have that battle
Mm-hmm.
with her. Some people, parents, I
Yeah.
know, teacher parents that go through the transition, there's always this period of the first few months, where their child is like confused between, okay, when is my parent my teacher, and then the
Right.
kind of like, well, you can't ask me to do that, and just trying to be like, hey, no, can we stop and do something else or whatever, like
Yeah.
With Sky, I didn't really have that. I just felt her just so
Okay.
grateful, to be able to do that. And she just kept on telling me all the time, "Merci, mama." Like, so happy
Oh,
we're doing homeschool, you know. So yeah,
okay. She's so
yeah, she
precious.
really
Oh,
is. Yeah, and her confidence. I say that's what's for me is the biggest transformation is her confidence. I mean, I'm telling you, like if you saw Sky today and you hadn't seen her all these years, you just saw her when she was in kindergarten, you couldn't recognize, I mean, how big of a leap she's had with her confidence. And I think, for some people it'd be like, oh no, it's going to be good for her, put her in that social setting. She'll have to have her wings and learn to fly without you, and for me, I'm more of the school of thought, like if you give your child that nest, that place where they can be fully themselves and they feel secure, one day that bird is going to willingly take that first step. You won't have to push them.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I've seen Sky do.
I love that perspective. I feel like I can relate to that so much as like an anxious child and shy
Yes.
person. And I remember I was treating a teacher once and I was like explaining to him how, I really did well in high school. I flourished, I had good grades, but in elementary, I really didn't. And I was like in his, and I just find like, I thought about it a lot. Like it just kind of bothered me, like how much homework kids are getting now. And I was just like, in your perspective, like how much does elementary school really matter? Because when I look back, like I just remember recess and like my friends and I don't remember the schooling. And he was saying like he actually really firmly believed that elementary school is one of the most important times of your life to build confidence, because it's the first time you're learning things, the first time you're putting it, the first time I don't know, you're comparing yourself. And I forget the good points that he was making, but it really made sense about how that's like really where your confidence is first being established. And I was telling him how I kind of struggled my first year of high school, and then I got my stride and we went. And he was like, think about the people who came from elementary feeling very confident, like they got everything they needed and they followed, and they started high school already like in a full sprint.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the difference. But
I think it's more,
yeah, I
it's not
just,
just the school, right? It's just like those years in general, like
yes.
the experiences you have throughout those years. So whether it be traditional schooling or, learning through a home-based education.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love, by the way,
Yeah.
John Holt. If some people are interested in reading more about the subject, and especially unschooling and how children learn. I believe that's how the book is called. One of my favorite ones is How Children Learn by John Holt. And I just find it fascinating. And he says kids are his friends, like they're just the smartest, and they don't have to have that structured setting to learn. And it's actually the opposite, because give children all they need all the time, or not all they need, but all the toys and all the games or whatever. At one point, when they don't have it in front of them, they'll be like, well, what do I do next? If you're there and you guide them and you support them and you provide them with what they need when they ask, or when that spark or that interest shows up, then the child leads the learning, right? And even, for example, he talks about when children get bored sometimes. As parents in this day and age, I get a lot of those questions on Instagram, because sometimes I just post stories of my kids just like hanging out together, or building forts or whatever. And they're like, you're so good being at home all the time with them. It must be hard, Yes, it comes with its challenges for sure, like anything in life. But I mean, they specifically about how do you deal with your kids always needing activities and asking you to play and stuff. I'm like, my kids don't ask me to play. And yes, it happens, but I let my kids get bored, because that's where like creativity gets sparked, even for us as adults. Whenever you have that downtime and just nothing to do, that's when I think most of us will get an idea of like something great to do, or just something creative. And so that's when I see my children. Sometimes school for one day is like, I just feel like there's no school book going on. Like it's not working, like Sky's she's not there. Like she doesn't want to learn with the pencil and the paper right in front of her. Let's just put it away, we'll get to it another day. And then it's just free play. but the things they do when they build, that's the setting they're allowed to have, is incredible. It's really incredible to watch. Like yesterday, they were trying to build a kite. So they like demantled, or whatever you call it. Like they took the screws out of like a tut's net, you know, like a how do you call that in English? A scooter, like a baby scooter, it's kind of old and whatever. And they just asked me, I'm like, yeah, for sure, like it's okay. So they took the handlebar and they're trying to, they attached like the string to it, and now they're building the kite, and they're talking about, well, do you think this is too heavy for it to float in the air? And like, oh, well, if put this and that, and then they're working together, two minds, they're building something. And I think even though maybe the result will not work, right? They'll try it. They've spent hours on getting ideas and researching, and can we watch this video, mom, to see if this technique could work? And so that that for me, you're learning way much more than if you're just opening that activity book, right? So I think it's amazing and I think that's how learning should be, based around children's interests, and having all the ages mixed together, which you have when you do homeschool with children at home, because your kids are all different ages. At school, you're in a grade with all the other kids that are your age, right? Which is okay too. It's just you see that cooperation, different levels, and Sky being responsible and being that older sister. Well, she does have that sense of like bringing them together, the youngest ones, and even bringing Luana into the teaching, and the activity in her own capacity, and oh, you hold this, Luana, while we tie this, or whatever it is, And I think it's just beautiful to watch.
That's a really interesting perspective. I had never thought about what that would mean to have a class that was really mixed in ages and how that could be beneficial. But I'm happy that you brought that up. Yeah. And the subject of boredom. It's so funny that you say that, because I've been talking about this all week, and I'm just, because I'm planning, to have kids in the near-ish future. It's just on my mind, and I'm a very cerebral person, so I overthink everything. And I talk to so many parents, and it's like such a common theme about the pressure that there is on parents nowadays. And I don't know where that comes from, if it's like the social media effect, or just have like so much access to information from whatever means that is like, there's like this really big pressure where like your kids can't get bored. And there's just the common theme that I receive is that when we think back to our parents, they were never trying to make sure we were occupied all the time. Like they really were fine with us being bored and figuring out our fun on our own. And we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
We independently play. Like I have memories of playing with my parents, but I have way more memories of playing with the kids on my street, my sister, making forts, and like, I don't know.
Absolutely. I think it can be very beneficial for them. And it's, it's the parent guilt, I think, like everybody's working so much and stuff, I won't let my kid be bored. Let's go do this weekend. And, we have these friends that there's an activity every night, and all their weekends are booked for the summer, and, and it's good. That's their thing, and that's totally fine. But I don't know how I'd be able to give my children what I want to give them, which is the ability to just have a slow pace, like let's just be, in the moment and see what we can do with time, and let's be kids,
Yeah. Okay. I love that. So you've already touched on a lot of this, but what did you learn when you became a teacher?
Wow, I learned so much. One of the biggest things was like a full circle moments, maybe also, of seeing life and time. And yes, I've learned a lot of things, like watching my children, just like how amazing they are at learning, and how they're sponges, and how kids are amazing. Like if we just took the time to really stop, and interact with children, even though if you have kids, you don't have kids, whatever, like just children in general, and we gave them our full presence, then we'd see how aware, conscious, and loving children are. It's made me fall in love with children even more. Like at the moment I became a mother, and I just, wow, like I wasn't the type of teenager that liked babysitting. I did it because okay, you know, but I didn't love to hang out with children kind of thing. And then I had my own, and it was life changing in that way. Like the more
Mm.
opportunities I have to speak with children, children are always around me. They're in my home all the time, all the friends, you know, I love it.
Yeah.
So that aspect, definitely I learned even more about children, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the full circle thing was about just time passing, you know, and the importance of being present, and what do we want to, what's the legacy we want to give our children, and what experience, the childhood do we want to give them, you know. And I just
Mm-hmm.
take myself, like, you know, I have these moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm my mom, or, you know, I remember these days when I was little. I remember these days of just
Yeah.
endless, like, summer kind of beautiful days where there's no rush, no going really anywhere, just my mom cooking in the kitchen, all these kids playing in the back, us learning whatever we had, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you're building and playing and laughing, and so just like, wow, I'm where I want to be, you know. I'm offering my
Yeah.
children what I want, what I wanted even more when I was little, you know, so yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what has always fascinated me the most about children. And I think of it, I always give this analogy, but for me, as you age, I find that being in awe with everything and being curious, it just fades more and more. And like the example I give is always is you know, Christmas. Like that Christmas spirit is always there. And I find like with each year, it's like I love Christmas, but it's just that feeling and that magic fades from year to year. And like whenever kids come around, it brings you right back to that like wonder about the world and
Oh gosh.
the
Yes, and that it for me, same thing. I can relate 100%. And then the day I had children, it brought it right back, you know, that magic. But and that's what children teach us too, is not to forget that inner child, you know, and still
mm-hmm,
play, you know, the invitation to
mm-hmm,
play. And it's not just necessarily playing with your children and like, I'm actually going to be play and do this game. It's just bringing back that joyful spirit that, and it takes work, you know, because we have that mental load all the time. And
yeah,
I got,
it's unlearning for
yes,
adults as
yes,
well.
it's definitely unlearning and letting go. And it's not easy because we have all these expectations. I think we put our, you know, on ourselves. And but man, sometimes I'm just, when I'm really overwhelmed with that mental load, that's one thing I'll do. I'll just be like, okay, man, you know what? Dropping everything for a
Mm-hmm.
moment, because it's still going to be
Yeah.
there. And once I'm done with this thing, because I'm working too, you know, as I'm homeschooling, I'm doing all these content creation for companies and stuff, and which
Yes.
I love. It's super fun, and I notice my children learning a lot through that too, through observation and through
Okay.
participation, and sometimes when they want to. But it's going to come back around, right? It's still, it's
Mm-hmm.
not ending, you know. It's like, I'm going to have to do it whenever my list is cleared. The list is going to start again tomorrow. So it's just being able to it doesn't mean
Yeah.
taking the whole day off. It means like, okay, right now what I need and what my children need are for just to like press pause for a second, sit down on the
Yeah.
floor, and just look at them and be fully available. My phone's not in my hands. I'm not taking a story. I'm
Yeah.
not sharing on social media. I'm just there, you
Yeah.
know? And we're not doing anything special, but it will just be like talking. Or one thing they do love to ask me is, tell us about a story when you were little. Or what did you do when you were,
Mm.
I don't know, they have the fascination with this. So I'm like running out of stories
Okay.
now, but like I try to tell them new ones instead. Like it's like, no,
Yeah.
you told us that one already. And just sharing a moment, I don't know, from the past or experience or whatever memory,
Yeah.
they love that. And it just makes us connect, and I just like forget about, you know,
Yeah.
that's the way for us, for our family to do it, or just go on a walk, or
Yeah. Puts things into
yeah, it puts things
perspective.
into perspective for sure.
Mm-hmm. So a common thing I hear from, you know, outsiders or people who aren't familiar with homeschooling is the big fear that people have, or I guess it's, you know, people like to justify their decision is like, oh, if this kid is homeschooled, they're going to lack socialization. And, you know, if you just prolong it, or if you only put them in high school, then, you know, learning how to adapt into the real world is just prolonged, and then they're at a disadvantage. So I was just curious what, if like you had heard that, what your thoughts were on that, and why that might be short-sighted.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the biggest points that comes back when you decide to do homeschooling. The main, the most popular question, I guess, you get asked. And I think it's a legitimate question, but kind of makes me laugh now, a little bit with the past 2 years as an experience, 2.5 years of homeschooling, for different reasons, just because, okay, kids at school are, yes, they're surrounded by other children their age, right? So they're socializing. But at school, you're most of the time, except recess, like you were telling me earlier, you don't recess and see your friends. You're doing work, or you're supposed to be, like you're actively learning stuff. So you're not necessarily exchanging or, just spending time with all these other kids all day long. So that's one thing. But also, you don't socialize just in the setting of school, in life in general, right? My kids socialize with the clerk at the store, the groceries, some other kids at the park, aunts, uncles, grandparents, because for me, I'm really lucky in that sense. I have a community, a village of people that have supported and added into, actively been present in the homeschooling journey for my children. So that's all socializing for me in my eyes. And in moments that are real life experiences too, So activities we go to, wherever we meet people, we talk to people. And luckily, I think there can be sometimes concern if you're like homeschoolers and you're living in, the middle of nowhere a little bit and you're not close to anybody really, then okay, maybe you're seeing just your family and your friends, they're close-knit family. But still, most of your socializing in life, when you look back into, at your life, either you went to school, traditional school or not, you socialize a lot with the people that, you love, or your family or friends and stuff like that. So for me, it's really not an issue. Kids socialize in many different settings, and not just with kids their age. They socialize with all types of people, all ages.
Yeah, it's funny. I keep thinking back to my elementary school experience, and part of it was I was bouncing around a lot from school to school. I went to like 3 different elementaries as we moved around, and I remember. But the most vivid memories was my last one, and I remember in grade 5, like I remember I was crying my eyes out, like clutching to my mom before going and getting to school. So already people are thinking this girl's a loser. She's in grade 5 and loves can't leave her mom. No, I'm kidding, but. I just didn't have many friends. And like when you were saying how and I didn't have that confidence. And then in grade 6, I met this friend who I'm still friends with, Emily Gray, and she filled me with confidence. I started having friends. I started thriving at school and much more. And I just think about that. And, if somebody isn't getting that at their school and they're getting it from home, imagine how much more confident they'll be once they really are socializing at their other activities or at the park or to what you were saying. I really think that's so important to really notice what is fueling them in a positive way. And then that only makes them bloom more when they're finally in those social settings, I guess.
Gosh, absolutely. And it reminds me of my elementary school too, and I was exactly like you're saying, so anxious, so shy, but wanting to perform, and I was a straight A student my whole life because I put so much pressure. But for me, I don't know how I would have gotten through it without my twin sister. I had my twin sister, and for me, she was my pillar. She was the reason why I believed I could go to school and it was going to be okay today. I could get past those fears and that stress. It's okay, if everything is, it's like that, but at least I have her, then I'm going to be good. And that's why for Sky too, when I was seeing her leave for school and not wanting to eat her breakfast in the morning and being so tired at night and, every night and morning crying, I don't want to go, mommy, why can't I stay with you? I just want to stay with you. It was so heartbreaking. It was going such, just so against
so deep
me, what I'm feeling, my intuition, my gut as a parent, because I follow it so much in all the other aspects, all the other areas of our life. And my mother, how I parent and everything, and this way, the school was the only place I wasn't following 100%, and it was too much for her, for me, and then, anyways, yeah.
So I know you're saying how your other kids are could be very different from Sky and may have different needs. So do you feel like you're open and flexible if they want to make choices to go into traditional school, or how do you monitor, like even Sky, maybe one day she'll change how she views her schooling and what can fuel her, and how do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, well, I've always said with Jan, my husband, that, we've said, at the end of each year, let's have a talk with their kids, see where they're at, their interest, and maybe potentially going to school, depending on where we are, what's life, is it a pandemic, is it not, what's happening around. I think ultimately we as the parents make the decision, but I trust my kids also to have their own opinion, wants and needs and stuff like that. So it's interesting that you say that, because this year we recently moved in this new neighborhood, and all the children that are going to the school near our house, they love their school. They've just been telling, my kids all about it. And we even went to visit the school because I wanted my children to see, and you know what, maybe they're interested. And as soon as we got out of there, they met all the kids. They saw that, they were just, oh my gosh, super excited. Yes, let's go. We want to go. So we'll see. We're still in the deciding point, I guess. Now I know Flynn, he has this like more out there, outgoing personality, very energetic. He needs to move his body. So,
such a boy.
Yes, he's such a little boy that's so active, and I feel like he thrives when he's surrounded by a lot of other kids his age. And he craves that a little bit. So sometimes at home, I feel like for him, I wish I could give him that a little bit more, like every day.
Right.
With Sky, I don't feel that, but at the same time, I feel like she's really getting such a boost of confidence in the past 2 years. And she's telling me like, Mom, maybe, you know what? Maybe I want to try school now. Maybe I feel better. And like, I'd be curious to try. And because all of her friends are telling me these activities, this, that, whatever. And so, what? So right now we're in this, as much as, there's pros and cons for me for, traditional schools, there's also pros and cons with homeschooling. I don't think anything is perfect. There's not a perfect formula in life for anything. So I'm open to them trying it. And I told them if there's a time during the year to try, the going to school, I think it's in the beginning of the year, because for everybody it's new, you're not just jumping in the middle. You don't know where they're at also in their learning, because we're not in the same necessarily learning curriculum. Anyways, so right now it seems like it's going in the direction that they might want to try it. And at any point that if I feel comfortable, they feel overwhelmed or whatever reason, we can always take them out of school. And I always want to be available to my kids to be able to homeschool them. And even if it's one child of the three, Yeah, that's our view on it. Some parents that I've been talking with, some of them, it's like, no, if you believe in homeschooling, then you should tell them like you're keeping them at home, Some others are like, well, you should listen to your child because they also have their, and I am kind of like in the middle a little bit in that, but I think they can have their own experiences too, if it's safe and they feel good about it, then why not?
So interesting. So last question. You mentioned pros and cons. So what would your takeaway, what would the pros and cons be if you kind of had to do a little list for homeschooling versus your experience with traditional schooling?
The pros and cons of homeschooling, the pros are definitely, like I told you, like just the freedom all around of like having the time, and choosing what we want to teach our children and being together all the time is a pro, but it's also a con, I believe. Yeah. Because I think it's healthy and it's good for everybody in the family to have their own moments, where they develop their own, social network or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
And so I feel like, and maybe it's how we structured our homeschool this past year, where we were more, because of the pandemic also and everything, there was less things to do. But now with the activities coming back, and they're doing more activities, they're finding their friends there too. So that's cool. So that was like a pro and a con. And then cons for homeschooling, I'd say that's maybe the biggest. And also a con for me is just having that whole responsibility as a parent to be the teacher, for the children. And also having my work and taking care of the home and all the hats that I have to wear. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed, and sometimes there are days where I'm just like, oh my gosh, it'd be way more simple if they were just at school, and then they'd be learning what they have to learn. So I get those moments, So maybe that's one of the cons, I'd say. And then it may be motivation sometimes for certain learning things, especially when they have to follow the curriculum, or it's just like, I'm so bored. I don't want to learn about verbs and maybe I feel like maybe in the school setting, some of the pros is like, well, everybody's doing the verbs right now, and you get that effect of like the group effect of, well, everybody's learning, so I think that's maybe a pro of school. The cons of school, traditional school is like, well, unfortunately, I think there's many because that's how I experienced school. I think it's rigid. It's very fast paced. It's a lot of days, a lot of hours outside of your home, your nest, that's how I call it, and it's more a fit in the box kind of mentality, kind of approach. And it's not necessarily personalized, and you don't get that much one-on-one time. So that's a big pro of homeschooling. You get just one-on-one time with your parents, your teacher parents. So I guess I kind of like rambled and mixed everything together, but.
Oh, it was perfect. I followed that very clearly.
Cool. Amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, was there anything else that you would want to leave on the podcast before we sign off?
No, I think we covered a lot. For anybody that's maybe wanting or thinking that, they want to step into homeschooling and try it out, I definitely tell you, like, it's one of the most amazing adventures you can go on, and you'll learn more about yourself. You'll learn more about your kids, and you'll definitely make the best memories. It won't necessarily be easy all the time, but what an amazing process and opportunity you're giving yourself and your children. So definitely go for it if you're trying. If you're thinking about doing it and you want to, you should try for it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all of your time tonight. I learned so much.
Thank you, Riley, for the opportunity to do this and sit down with you. I loved it.
So how can people reach you if they want to collaborate with you, learn more about you, learn more about homeschooling?
Yeah, for sure. I'm very active on Instagram. So if you follow me, it's Audrey Sckoropad, and that's where I share most of my things. And my website, audreysckoropad.com. But mostly Instagram, and also on Facebook. It's called Audrey's Antidotes. My page is Audrey's Antidotes. So don't hesitate to contact me, leave me a message, and I'll share more about homeschooling in the upcoming weeks too, because as we're ending this school year, I do get a lot of questions concerning it. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye.